皆さんこんにちは and welcome to Shogo's podcast. So today, I wanted to talk to you about a story where I thought that people can change their past. So now you hear that people saying that you can change the present and your future depending on your actions you take now, right? But I think that a lot of people wouldn't say that people can change their past. Because you can't go back in time and redo the things that you've done in the past, right? How can you change the past? So let me tell you about a story. So I used to write a blog, actually, of the things I learned from reading books or talking with people, talking with my masters. And one day, I used to train in Kyudo, the Japanese bow martial art. And I had an instructor. I made a video about Kudo and the bow martial art. And I explained in the omake talk at the very end that I quit after training about an year because I have very clumsy hands. And it was very hard for me to handle the bow and the arrows and items properly. It was very stressful for me, yes. Although I love the art and the beautiful procedures of drawing the bow and everything, I wasn't able to do it myself. But my instructor was very, very friendly to me even after I quit training. And one day he read my blog article that I wrote about people can change their past. It was something that I read from a book. And he said, Shogo, you want to go to izakaya, have some sake with me? We haven't seen each other for a while. And I said, of course, sir. And we went. And after we had a few cups of sake, he started to tell me about his story. He said he was very touched, and he said that he agrees with me. He agrees that people can change their past, and he talked about his episode, his story that he experienced. So my instructor, he originally started Kyūdō training when he was in university. He went to the same university that I did in Kyoto, called Doshisha University, and he belonged to the Kyudo club team. So club members, even after they graduate, once in a while there are events where graduates can come back to the university, train together with the university students at that time, be able to speak with young people, and the students will be able to talk with adults too, listen to their experiences of working, and people, they will eventually have to find jobs after they graduate and such, right? So it's a very good place where people can communicate with each other, And one time, when he went to one of these sessions with the university students, the graduates came together and did the Kudo ceremony together. So in Kudo, of course, there are occasions where you shoot the arrow by yourself, but as I explained in my video in my main channel, it's more of kind of like a ceremony. So all the movements are fixed. You have to move a certain way, you have to walk a certain way, you have to handle the bow and arrow a certain way. And the most strict ceremony form is having 5 people, 5 archers, you would say, Kudo trainees, line up, and one person shooting a arrow at a time and going, I think it was going 2 times. So the first person shoots, the second person shoots, the third person shoots, and it goes to 4th person, 5th person, and then the first person again, and comes to the 5th person again. And everyone draws in a row, doing the movements all fixed and ceremonial movements. So my instructor, when he went to one of these ceremonies, he was the 5th person to draw the bow. And when the person in front of him, he was a senpai in front of him, a senior. When the 4th person in front of him draw the arrow, he suddenly started to leave the dojo after shooting the arrow. And he thought maybe my senior desperately needed to leave, maybe something happened, maybe he needed to go to the bathroom, maybe even. And he was starting to do the procedure of shooting the bow. And when he was just about to shoot the arrow, he heard a very loud sound of someone collapsing to the floor, and people were screaming. And he would eventually find out that it was a senior that left the dojo, and he actually died there. He passed away there because of, I think it was a heart attack or something. He probably felt something was wrong when he was drawing the bow, and he tried to leave the dojo, but he passed away there. And because my instructor at that time was very, very surprised to hear the large sound of someone falling to the floor, he couldn't concentrate anymore. And he just let go of his hand, and the arrow didn't reach the target at all, and it just fell on the floor somewhere very far away from the target. And he eventually found out that his senpai, his senior, even though he passed away right after leaving the dojo at the entrance almost, he bowed before he left the dojo, which is something that you must do. Bow before entering and leaving the dojo. He even bowed to the dojo and fell to the floor afterwards. And he regretted this event a lot. He thought his senior, right before the end of his life, he bowed to the dojo and he shot the last arrow that he would shoot in his life. But he himself, although his senior did everything properly until the very last moment of his life, he didn't shoot that arrow properly at all. And he thought, if I wasn't going to shoot that arrow properly at all, I should have at least said or talked to my senior what's wrong, or try to at least help him. Maybe if he was the first person to notice it, right? Because he was right behind him, seeing him leaving the dojo. Maybe he could have saved his life, right? So he didn't do anything properly. That's what he thought. He didn't shoot the arrow properly. He didn't go to save his senior's life, and he regretted this event for he said over 10 years. He regretted this event. And eventually, even after he became an instructor and started to teach Kyudo trainees, he was always very, very strict to them. That he always taught them, you must do the procedures and the manners perfectly. And he would be very angry to his kohai, to the trainees he was teaching, because he regretted this event for more than 10 years. And he was cursed from it almost. But one day, sometimes in the Kyudo or every Japanese martial art, there are these training sessions where different dojos come together and they train together so they can find the good points and bad points of each other's dojos and the training methods and such. And one day there was this big training session. I think it was only held once a year. It was an annual event. And after the very long training, like 3 or 4 hours, they would have these parties afterwards, and people would see each other, like have some drinks together and talk and just communicate. And at this party, he had a chance to talk with the grandmaster, which was in the highest dan, I think, which is the 8th dan. He was in the highest dan, and at that point my instructor was in this 5th dan. He's in a really high dan, but not as high as him, obviously. He was talking with the grandmaster. And he was pretty drunk, actually, and somehow he wanted to talk about this event to the grandmaster. And he said, so, he went to this training session at his university, and his senior that was shooting the arrow in front of him suddenly left the dojo, and he fell to the floor. And he was so surprised about it, he wasn't able to shoot the bow properly, and he regretted it, the story to the grandmaster. And he expected this grandmaster to tell him that, oh, you should have shot that arrow properly, or you should have stopped there immediately and tried to go and help him, But what the grandmaster said was something that he didn't expect at all. The grandmaster said, a ceremony of a Kyūdō is finally completed when the 5th person, the 5th archer, shoots the arrow. So if you hadn't shot that arrow, no matter what kind of arrow it was, no matter how bad the shot was, if you didn't shoot that arrow, it would have meant that ceremony wasn't completed. It would have meant that senior's last Kyudo ceremony didn't end. He wasn't able to complete it. So son, he said, no matter what kind of arrow you shot, it was correct. It was right. What you did was correct, no matter what kind of arrow you shot. And my instructor told me that night when we went to that izakaya that he cried so hard for all of his regrets that he had for over a decade. It was finally relieved. And he was saved by the words of this grandmaster. And from that day on, his life completely changed. He didn't have any nightmares of that day. He wasn't able to shoot that arrow. He stopped having nightmares, and his views towards life completely changed that day. And he told me, Shogo, what you wrote on that blog article was correct. Your life can change. Your past can change on how you see your past in the present day today. So I really thought, this is a very beautiful story that I could share with you. If you don't know too much about Kyudo and how the ceremony looks like, I'll have a video and a link of it in the description box so you can take a look at it and maybe come back to this podcast again. And I really thought that the story is beautiful, and training martial arts, the Japanese martial arts like Kyudo, is so really, it really changes your life. And it was an event, a night I could never forget either myself. And yeah, I just wanted to share this story with you. Yes. Please let me know what you thought of it. And if you yourself had any events like this, how your past changed because how you see it now changed. This is the end of my story, but if I can talk a little bit about my own as well. I actually had a best friend in elementary school and middle school. He was almost my only friend at that time because I was experiencing pretty bad bullying back at that time because I was a returnee. I grew up in America and came back to Japan, and I couldn't act normally like the other kids. But this one boy was my friend, and he was my best friend. He was always on my side. He would protect me from the bullying, and I trusted him so much. He was a very, very important person to me. But eventually, when I was in high school, my second year of high school, I actually lost him. He went to swim in the ocean with his other friends, and he drowned that day. And for a long time in my life, I just regretted it. He told me right before he went to swimming to the ocean that day. He told me, Shogo, we want to hang out, this weekend. And because, again, we spent together in elementary school and middle school, we didn't go to the same high school, so we didn't see each other that often. And I was a little bit busy at that time, probably a bit because of a test I had to take or something. And I said, no, not this weekend, not this weekend, maybe next week. And he said, okay, that's all right. I was thinking of maybe going to the ocean and go swimming this weekend with other friends, so that's fine. And that was the last last thing we talked, And I regretted it so much. This just one test or something that I don't even remember. I rejected my friends, my best friend asking me if he wanted to, hang out. And maybe if I said yes at that moment, he wouldn't leave this world and leave me, And I regretted it so much for a long time. But eventually, growing up, becoming an adult, getting married with my wife, and having more friends, and having a family, for a long time, his death was something really, really sad and a regret for me. But eventually I found out that I became the person who I am. I was able to overcome all the pain of being bullied and being isolated from the community and everything, all thanks to him. And if he didn't exist, no matter how his life ended, that is something that people cannot control. That is up to destiny, I believe. So I started to think that it was all thanks to him, is all thanks to him who I am now. And no matter how his life ended, I won't regret it. And I'm thankful that he was born in this world, and he was alive. And I remember him. He is still alive in me. And I don't regret it anymore. There's nothing I could have done at that time. And I'm very, very thankful that I met him, and that he was alive. And yeah, so I was able to change my past too. So yeah, sorry, that was something not related to my first story about listening to my Kyudo instructor. But again, if you have any stories of your own, it'll be great if you can share with me. And thank you so much for listening to such a personal story. And I'll see you in my next podcast. Goodbye, everyone.